Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Muhammad Arif, a student of MS Project Management, second semester, Group B of the evening. This is the assignment that was assigned by Dr. Wais Mufti. I'm really thankful as I missed the chance to be physically available for delivering the presentation with the Group 9, which I was part of. Thanks to sir that still extended this opportunity to record and share my portion of the presentation, that is from slide number 7 to slide number 12. And it's about international commercial terms. Now, this international commercial term is sets of rules and regulations that are already explained by the group member in the previous slides that governs basically the international trade that happens between two parties, or it can be between more than two parties, but generally it involves buyer and seller. There can be a company, organization, or industry, or an individual on the both sides of the buyer and seller. So the Incoterms commerce terms, Incoterms, governs the merchandise delivery responsibility and cost sharing in general. This is what all these rules and regulations for international commercial term is about. Well, you can see that it is basically it's international trade. It comes in number. Freight means that it comes in bulk of provision of goods, where these rules are applied for smooth trading, where there is risks are clear that are involved, and the merchandise reaches from the seller to the buyer in properly governed mechanism. So these Incoterms is basically used in the foreign trade, that is between the two different countries. If you have a company and want to purchase items, let's say for Pakistan, companies purchasing any goods from China, then the terms are applied even if you are going to any other country, Central Asia, or if it is India, where you have trade relations with. So generally, the Incoterms are applied and you have to follow that. And from time to time, they are updated as well, because the scenarios changes with time. So it's a living document. So it is used to set, as I said, for the responsibility and delivery mechanism of the merchandise. So define obligation of both parties that is involved in the transaction, what of the buyer will be responsible for, what the seller will be responsible for, who will share the cost, what portion of the cost, during transportation of the merchandise, where they will be involved, to which level, and what risks in terms of cost and kind will they cover. As I said, the mechanism of the merchandise or the goods that we're purchasing or delivering or selling will determine the distribution and transfer of risks. For example, if there are damages occur, if there is insurance involved, it will be shared with both parties, and only the seller will be responsible for the damages or loss of the merchandise, or only the seller will take their responsibility. So it differs from company to company and country to country. They have a set defined rules. If you agree, you can go with that merchandise. If you do not agree, then you cannot do business with that company. So it's for the clarity of the overall business, that dispute solving and the events redressal, all these things are covered in it. That is one of the main purpose of Incoterms as well. State the clear sharing of expenses between the parties during transport. Anything can happen when you are shipping an item, let's say, so a dry port shipping, or it's seaport shipping, or it's air shipping, whatever it is. So the expenses and risk of them will be here. So everything is clearly pre-charted out. So it involves a clear type of a planning and roles and responsibilities. So necessity of update, as I said, that the international trade paradigm shifts from time to time. With the rapid expansion of the world trade is there, new trends comes in, global transportation means like in the digitalization world, we got now ease of tracking items even if we do for personal buying and selling their apps, their dashboards, their tracking, real-time tracking of the merchandise. So it's all about facilitating it and applying it effectively. And also considering whatever the factors that arises as a new scenario. So the two parties, the buyer and seller, basically can go through updating what is already standardized or including new terms and conditions that are mutually agreeable and acceptable. Now, this is the buyer and seller cycle that is generally involved in any trade. There are two parties. One will sell the merchandise, the other will the buyer the merchandise. A demand comes from the buyer. The seller advertises and the buyer puts up his demand. So that generally, when we see it internationally, and we take it from the warehouse level, so it's definitely we start from the packing, boarding, lodging, transportation in between, if it is on the aerial route or whether it is from the sea port through shipping, the custom clearances will be involved. The responsibilities of delivery will be involved. So overall logistic forwarding process, it's very much clearly displayed here. Handling, insurance, handling inbound, which is on route. Then you have the transport, already two bulk transport methods are used, shown and displayed aerial and to the seaport, but basically big bulk comes internationally in the seaport level. That mode is mostly utilized because you can send a bulk of item or freight. So custom clearing duties will come down to the level of the buyer when it is reaches there, and from there the final transportation and then unloading and later on further distribution if the buyer is a business itself. So this generally explains the overall global logistic forwarding process. Now, as we can see here, we have grouped the incoterms that is already standardized internationally. Contract for carriage without assuming risk of loss during shipment. That is about sharing of the responsibility and it emphasizes on the risk cost factors. So it includes the category of cost and freight, cost, insurance and freight, carriage paid to carriage and insurance paid to whom will that get with the third organization, government organization, another organization. So these are grouping in terms of risk factors and the cost of the risk. We're in the C category because all of that is CFR, CIF, CPT, CIP as abbreviations cleared here is capitalized by the alphabet C. There is also there all cost and risk need to bring goods to place of destination, a full complete process. That is the group D. All of it delivered, terminal delivered, place delivered, duty paid. That portion of it is covered. And similarly, make goods available at on premises. The E category and delivery of goods are carrier appointed by buyer. The F category. So mostly the C category is what that is. All of that is exercised, but you can see that more area is covered in the C category that I will be explaining. Now the categories further, what is the need of it, what is the further clarity of it, the mode of transportation involved in it. Of course, there is a service provision as well that the companies will offer the service. It's a merchandise transportation already from one country one to another. So services provision is automatically involved. So name, place of delivery, free carrier, whatever the cost sharing mechanism is. So services that is been borne by the buyer or seller, their responsibility must be clarified and they are clarified. Any mode of transport, including multimodal, some can be go through flights, some are urgently required merchandise items, some that are heavy and bulky in number, that portion can come through the seaport. So you can go for a monomodal about of transportation to the multimodal of transportation, and it can also involve by road. It's not a big an option that is regularly used in international trade, and that is used within the trade that is what should I say, exercised within a country or within a district, then go for the land transportation. So here we are mostly going to the sea and aerial transportation for merchandise because it is an international commercial merchandise that we are talking about here. So CPT, CIP, DAT, DAP, DDP, we have all discussed that. Then carriage paid to carriage and insurance, so you pay the insurance, so you're responsible at which level, at which terminal it will be available. The clarity of all the information, the delivery place, delivery duty will be paid to whom, each and everything will be clarified in the documentation prior to the actual execution of the merchandise is very much important. To ocean, definitely shipment based. It will involve the risk factors. It will involve the weight, the space, but mostly the space occupying factor is important in the ocean transport, and the weight factor is important in the aerial transport. So the charges and the risk costs and the overall transportation costs differ on these two basic criteria of weight and space. So free alongside the ship, it will when it is unloaded, not yet loaded, so whether it will be free. That all it's also depending on the country to country what their trade situation is, what their general option. Free on board, the import of the shipment, cost and freight, cost insurance and freight. So these are different modules there. Now, further explaining these modules, the groups. So CFR cost and freight, definitely freight is when you are receiving or purchasing the merchandise in bulk. So seller in CFR, seller delivers the goods and board the vessel or procures the goods already so delivered. So here the responsibility most comes on the seller, most like buyer friendly approach. The risk of loss or damage the good passes on when the goods are on board the vessel. Definitely there can be a third company involved, which is involved in the transportation people. So it is shifted to them. So good for both the parties. The seller must contract for and pay the costs and freight necessary to bring the goods to the named port of destination. And in this portion, the seller, as I said, it's a buyer-friendly CFR approach. So most of the responsibility is on the seller. It's a good technique where you are a big company and you have a multifaceted transportation throughout the world. So you are encouraging the buyer. So seller pays for unloading if the contract of carriage covers unloading if it is predefined. So you'll pay for the unloading as well, and not just putting it on the board for the first time for transportation. Seller clears goods for export, but not import. So definitely here the seller shifts the responsibility to the buyer. He's responsible from his side up to the export level, and the documentation and cost of import definitely will shift to the purchaser. Seller has no obligation to obtain insurance. So insurance company or the insurance of the merchandise is in the CFR cost and freight the responsibility of the buyer. It's not the responsibility of the seller. Place of delivery of the goods where that will be going. So the delivery obligation is fulfilled by the seller where goods are on board the vessel. Now from the warehouse of the seller up to the vessel, here we are technically talking about the seaport. We're talking about a ship. So the seller obligation or responsibility is up to that level. Risk of loss passes when the goods are on board. The buyer is in and the seller is out. When it is on board, the shipment will now move towards the destination. The port of the destination, seller pays for carriage to port of destination. Here again, as I said, it's a buyer-friendly approach. So that transportation to the destination from the port when the ship reaches, also the cost is shared by the or borne completely by the seller. Now, in this category or grouping, cost, insurance, and freight. Where a seller delivers the goods on board the vessel or procures the goods already delivered, the risk of loss of damage of goods passes when the goods are on board the vessel must contract for and pay the cost of freight necessary to bring the goods of the name port of the destination. So it's a very clear rules and regulation for this portion as well. Like CFR, but with additional obligation to procure insurance to port of destination is added. Insurance requirements, minimum cover institute cargo in the amount of control contract price plus 10% from point of delivery to point of destination. So we always already know that if it is shipment is the port, so there will be a destination where you will take the goods finally to your warehouse from where whatever you have intended to do with it, further distribution within the country or within the district or within the province. It's up to the buyer who can, I said, can be a business itself, an organization, company, or an individual. So here it clarifies the amount sharing of the process here. Seller clears goods for export, but not import, which was already clarified in the previous point as well. It's the level which the seller will be involved is up to the export, and whatever is involved in the import will be on the seller, which is a very fair deal. Further, we have carriage and insurance paid to group of incoterms. The seller delivers the goods to a carrier or another person nominated by the seller at an agreed place, if any such place is agreed between the parties. Everything is predetermined. It's always a very bad option to change the terms, change the, say, the route of the delivery, change the mode and modality of the delivery after the papers are signed or after the agreement is made. So that is not a, what should I say? Generally, if we see our lives as well, we say that it's not a good deal if the seller makes changes during the delivery process or the shared responsibility is changed or altered. So it's not taken as a good deal. And of course, you will be canceling it or you will be turning it or you will not do business. So it's not good for any company. Seller must contract for and pay the cost of carriage necessary to bring the goods to the named place of destination. So it clearly identifies the role of the seller that his contract will pre-include for payment of cost of carriage up to the seller level of destination. We will see it. Like CPT, what's the change in the CIP? Carriage insurance paid to. The additional requirement seller paid to insurance for insurance to the named destination. That is on another obligation on the seller. Insurance requirements, minimum cover. Issued carbon clause C is in the amount of contract price plus 10% from point of view to point of a destination is added here. Buyer may pay for additional coverage. Seller must provide the information to allow buyer to do so. So it is again, I'm repeating that everything is predetermined and should be predetermined, and that's how the trade goes. So the notes is clarifying further the differences between the grouping of international commercial terms, and you can see that how much important it is for any company to abide by this and predetermine it at every contract level and every step level. Now further going, we have the carriage paid to CPT. Seller deliver the goods to the carrier or another person. I already mentioned that the transporting company can be a third party, that usually is. It may or may not be the seller or buyer own company. It can be or it cannot be, depends. So the seller, in case it's not the seller's controlled or part of a business or his own transportation company, in such case, the seller delivers the goods to the carrier or another person nominated by the seller at an agreed place, if any place agreed between the parties, and the seller must contract for and pay the cost of care necessary to bring the goods to the named place of destination. Whenever it can be applied in micro as well as the macro. Here we are talking about the macro international trade level, but at the micro level, as you can see, that if you are sending an item from your home, let's say it's a mechanical item, electrical item, which have a certain cost and it has a weight and it occupies a space. It can be any item. If you are transporting a motorcycle, you are transporting a vehicle, you are transporting electrical appliances, fridge, freezers, etc. So we do that as well. You have to reach out to the transportation company, and they will have their own terms regarding the loss or damage level, cost sharing, and per kilometer or per kg cost that will that is predetermined with that company. Whether you agree, will go for that. So seller clears goods for export and pays for transport to any country necessary to delivery. So this is the responsibility clearly on the part of the seller, not the buyer of the merchandise. And further, seller has no obligation to pay for insurance, which is now different from the previous groups in the CPT, but must provide buyer information, buyer insurance, and buyer's risk and expense. Now, here it is not that much buyer friendly. It's more of a seller friendly, that is shifting the risk. The thing is about shifting the cost. The major thing is about shifting the risk. So buyer obtains import licenses and carries out customs formalities. So that is the additional cost of the merchandise is on the buyer itself. And seller pays for both loading and unloading. Here the seller is on the safe corner, I should say. But it's predetermined by the seller that he is responsible for the loading, unloading, and the risk and whatever damages that is involved there will be borne by the seller. And after that, the buyer is responsible for everything. With this, I would like to thank my classmates, my group members, Umar Farooq Shehzad. We jointly work on this presentation. So my portion ends. Heard that it was 5 minutes allowed, but I'm known to take more time. Like I went here also a little bit more than the required time space allotted to me. So thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure having the classes with you. Rather, it was a short duration class modes of 4 teachers here for one subject, but it was a new and good experience with you, sir. And looking forward for a positive liaison and the learning process with you and the institute. That's all from my side. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, my classmates. Thank you all.